What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Movie Emporium's TV review of Snowpiercer Season 3, Episode 10, The Original Sinners. This episode is directed by, once again, Christoph Schrewe. Now, before we begin, if you like this video, awesome. Hit the subscribe button to join Movie Emporium. Hit that notification bell at the top to find what's coming in next. If you like this video, awesome. Hit that like button, as well as commenting below on any video that you watch, including this one. All right, everybody, another season of Snowpiercer is now in the books. We finally concluded season 3, and this was an interesting episode. It leads to some really big new openings and ideas and concepts, and resolves a lot of things, but also leads into some new mysteries and so on and so forth. And for the most part, I think it's a pretty successful season finale. I know a lot of people haven't been real high on this season, but I really think it's a much marked improvement of season 2. You know, it's an episode that has to do a lot. I don't think it's entirely successful in what it's trying to do, but I think it's an episode that really shows a lot of the strengths of what Snowpiercer can do, for good or worse, I guess you could say. And it pretty much opens up as you expected. Miss Audrey is playing on the piano, a very ominous tune as part of the ominous version of, you know, the way that things are going to start to go down. And of course, Melanie is getting ready to conduct the train, and she's getting her suit on to take over the train and have them go past the whole, you know, the turn or whatever to go to New Eden. And it pretty much leads, like, I think this happened last season, where there was going to be this big war and it just kind of fizzled, I guess you could say. And that's what ends up happening in this episode, which I don't necessarily know if I liked, but I think, you know, it happens the way it happens, and that's kind of where it has to be. But of course, Layton and Melanie are preparing both sides. There's going to be a battle. Layton, you know, talks to his Taily people, tries to get him on board, and he just tells them, you know, I screwed up. I tried to play dirty in my power, and, you know, we really believe that this is something that we can, you know, attend to, even though they're like, is it really possible? And Layton says yes, and they all agree. It's very typically lining down the center or the side pieces to this chessboard that is finally getting close to his checkmate. And Melanie, by Ruth and by Aleks, really realizes that she doesn't have a chance when it comes to Layton. Layton has the tail section. There's a lot of people. Yes, there's a lot of people who don't believe it, but believe her or believe him. But there's more people that do believe him, that believe New Eden could be something. So he actually gets his people all the way up to the vegetation train, which is kind of, I think, the middle point or something like that of this whole situation. And they do the whole, if you've ever seen 300, where you put all the shields in front of them and kind of to protect them in case they have a big rumble or a big scuffle or whatever. You know, and then Melanie, who realizes what's going to happen, Ruth decides she's not going to stay with this, even though she taught Melanie and Layton talk to one another down in like the underneath where they have the little train things. And, you know, Melanie has decided, you know, she's got to do what she's got to do. And Ruth goes with her at first, but then Ruth, after Melanie decides that maybe she needs to side with Wilford, which has always been the problem of Melanie's character and Layton's characters, Ruth decides to leave as soon as Melanie tells her that she's going to ask for Wilford's help because he has Sam Roche and the jackboot people. And it becomes basically, in the end, Melanie is going to do exact opposite of what she always did, which is she's going towards Wilford, which has never been a good idea. You don't go towards Wilford. He's always going to be the bad guy. And I thought Wilford maybe had changed, but basically because he's under prison lock and key or whatever, he's always going to be the guy he was going to be because he is the bad guy. And so she goes and then Ruth leaves, and then Aleks comes back because she wants to be with her mother because it's just how it is. And, you know, of course, Melanie goes to Wilford and says, you know, I am the engineer of this train. And Wilford says, please let me have my current, you know, things. Let me have my situation and, you know, my means that I usually have. And they agree. They shake hands, and they say they actually send Sam and the jackboot people towards Layton's car, and there's a standoff. And yes, Wilford now has his own icy Boskovic. He now has the guy that was in the last season who was actually the good guy. You know, the tall guy ends up getting hurt in one of the trains, and he's now like a disfigured individual, but he's now the muscle for Wilford. But like I said, the thing that happens that it happens like 5 minutes later after all this is said and done. Melanie or Layton calls Melanie, or Melanie calls Layton, whatever the two, and they have a discussion, and they realize, you know, Layton now knows, thanks to Ruth and Sykes, who sent a rat to give information to Layton, that there's never going to be a truce between them if she goes with Layton. Like, they need to work together, or at least, it's not insinuated, but they need to come to some kind of understanding, because, of course, Wilford is always going to betray them in some form or factor. I mean, it's given. You've seen it happen. He makes deals and then he betrays, people in the long run. It's just who Wilford is. He's a megalomaniac. He's very much an autocratic, if you want to put it in that respect. So he's never going to give Melanie what she wants. He's always going to betray Melanie, which is what he's always done. And in the process of everything, we have Zara, who leaves the baby with Bennett for a few seconds, goes and talks, or a few minutes, and goes and talks to Wilford. Says, will Wilford agree to their stipulation that he will always keep the baby safe? Well, as we learn, when Melanie comes down, is like, we're not going to have bloodshed. We're not doing that. I just talked to Layton. We're not having bloodshed. Like, what are we going to do next? And that's when Wilford decides, he's going to break his agreement with Zara, and he's going to use the baby against Layton to get Layton to lay down arms. And yeah, that's not going to go very well. This basically leads Wilford to take Melanie to basically where they have the car that Melanie was in for the whole entire season, for the most part, outside of the last episode. And as soon as Wilford sees the baby, and as soon as Melanie gets in the room, they lock the room. And all of a sudden, Layton comes out with a spear. He's like, with a spear, at Wilford. And Wilford knows he's been played, and he kind of laughs about it. And then the pretty much option that they give Wilford is he's going to go in the same vehicle as, of course, Melanie was in. He's given 6 months, worth of the chemicals and stuff like that, the stuff that kept her alive, the protein packs and stuff like that. And he doesn't argue with them. He just goes in there. He knows that there's going to we know for a fact he's going to be in the 4th season. It's not really much of a surprise, but for the time being, he needs to be put somewhere. And it's a little forced, a little goofy. This whole episode has those moments where it's just kind of, it does things so quickly and dramatically that it's just kind of weird. But in the end, he's put in there and he's lowered out onto the tracks and basically left to die for the most part. And he hooks himself up and he's like, I'll be back. I'll be back, twisting, turning, stuff like that. And we'll see what happens. And it basically leads to, in essence, this episode breaking down to Melanie and Layton are at the car where they give announcements, the announcement car, and they are standing right next to each other, and they decide that this is going to happen, that they have somehow come to some kind of even ground, common ground, I guess you could say. And that's when they talk to everybody on the radio, and they decided to split the cars. I don't know how many cars are going to be split, but there's going to be split between Snowpiercer and Big Alice, and the Layton crew are going to take Big Alice to New Eden, and of course Melanie is going to take Snowpiercer and continue on the track. And they basically given people the choice. You either come with Melanie or you come with Layton. And they do it in, a very, very emotional type of thing where they say, you guys make the choice. Whoever wants to come with us is allowed to come with us. Whoever wants to come with, Melanie is allowed to come Melanie, Layton, so on and so forth. And that's pretty much when the rest of the episode kind of plays out. Earlier in the episode, John left LJ because Varosh is like, anybody here held against their will. John, of course, runs, and that's when Icy Bosovic picks him up and throws him per Wilford's, thing. And he decides to leave LJ, and he decides to go, of course, to Big Alice because he thinks he wants to go to New Eden. This is not making LJ very happy. She's crying, all that good stuff, and we'll talk about LJ in a second. But it pretty much sees the split of the trains. It pretty much sees the split of the main core cast. Of course, Audrey's going to stay behind with Melanie. Bess is going to go with Layton. Melanie has kind of just allowed Aleks to be Aleks and just go with Layton and stuff like that. And they have their big moment. It's interesting that Bennett decides to stay with Melanie, but there's that love there, that they have between each other. So I kind of understand it. And then Javier goes with Big Alice, which is a really strange thing to me. It's the same thing with Sam because they were so angry in the last episode by what happened that you would think it would be reversed or it'd be Aleks controlling the train and so on and so forth. But maybe Javier had a change of heart after they got rid of Wilford and all that good stuff. And, it's really stuff that I don't understand the idea and concept behind, just because of how a lot of switching happens so dramatically in this episode that it's really strange to think about. But of course, Ruth is going to go with Big Alice. Tristan, who's always been her second in command, stays behind. We just have like for instance, Sam goes with Layton to go to New Eden. All these people Sykes and stuff like that, the people who've always been on Layton's side are going to go to New Eden. And it's a very somber, very heartfelt moment for Snowpiercer, I guess you could say. It's not what I would call the most sad moment I've ever teared up to, but there's some emotional stuff because there's a lot of people leaving. Like, but of course, Miles decides to stay with stay with Bennett, and of course Melanie, because they are some of the best in the market. Well, they're the only ones in the market outside of Aleks because everybody else is dead. But it's just that kind of stuff. It's just splitting of the two groups to go off on their own to do their thing. As they get down to the last 20 or 30 seconds, Bess realizes that she has to stay with Audrey. She's in love with Audrey. It's just she has to do it. And Layton realizes, do what you need to do. And she goes off to be with Audrey. And they disconnect the trains. And you see it, and you see the train, the Snowpiercer go off on the normal track, and then Big Al's go backwards on the other track because they can't go forward. It's all that, how trains work. And I thought that's where the episode was going to end, but I know you have to have some stingers at the end, that type of thing. But it actually goes on for about 5 more minutes, believe it or not, which I thought was kind of interesting. And then we have, of course, LJ. There's always going to be that one major character that has to die at the very end of the season. And I thought it was kind of funny how the simple fact that, she's always been a character that got away with everything. The murder in the first season and the way she plays both sides and how she brutally murdered Kevin, which I was happy she would kill Kevin because Kevin was a nasty human being. But she pulls out the eyeball, and as we've seen earlier, it's apparently foreshadowing now. She sticks the eyeball in her mouth, which she has done before. And I don't know if it's some random dude or some dude that really didn't like her actually knocks into her, and she chokes on the eyeball. And of course, no one's around because she's in the back, with no one near her, and of course she chokes to death. And yeah, goodbye LJ, goodbye Annalise Basso from the series. Apparently, it's kind of a fitting end. It's a weird thing that happened at a weird moment, but it's like, how do you get that one more awesome moment for a terrible human being on the show? And this show's never shied away from the most disturbing things to kill people. And she's always been sucking on someone's eyeball, which is a really strange thing. And yeah, she chokes to death. And she's gone. So Annalise Basso was an amazing character on the show. She got short shrifted in the season. I thought she was gonna have more to do, but I think she grew as an actress on the show. I think she did a really nice job and had a lot of fun with her character. It's just I wish they had added more. I was hoping for so much more with her character, but I think it makes sense for her to kind of be killed off in this episode or this season, just for the simple fact that she has outused her character in the series, and she just needed to die. That's to be fairly honest. She used people. She threatened people. She threatened her husband, and her husband wanted to get away, and he did. And he's like, "We'll be back." No, not really. She's gone. So that's the end of her character. Thank you for being on the show. I guess you could say. I don't know, but Annalise Basso is officially finished with the show for the time being. At least unless they bring her back somehow. I don't know. But this is when we get Miss Audrey, of course, having her moment in the sun where she sings, and that's always a big moment for the series. When she starts singing, it's always involving the different things that are going on in the show. And yeah, as we see, of course, the things with Big Alice and Layton and the crew is not going very well so far. But the reason for that is the train is untested. There's a lot of problems with it, and they're starting to see themselves fall, starting to have problems. And there's a bridge coming up, which Layton's like, "Why didn't you tell me about this?" And Javi's like, "I didn't think it was important." It's always important to tell a bridge, especially when the track has been untested. And it doesn't go very well. They're really close to kind of derailing and falling off the bridge, and luckily they don't. And the train falls sideways, kind of like in the original movie where it kind of falls to the side. And like the original movie, they are checking the weather, and of course they notice that the temperatures are rising from -10 to -5 to a point where they can go outside. So it's always been debated whether New Eden was a real thing, whether Layton was telling the truth. They decide that they tell everybody on the intercoms that we are at a place, the temperature is rising. And for the first time in their lives in 6 or 7 years, however long it's been since they've been on this train, they walk outside and they see barely any snow. They see a lake, and they found their New Eden. This is a place where they can possibly live the rest of their lives until the rest of the clouds clear up and stuff like that. And why that's great is you just get to see people who've been stuck and confined and dealing with so much PTS drama and just so much problems to be able to be in the open, be out in the sky, be able where they used to be when their lives were completely ruined by stupidity. And yeah, it really is a really nice moment. It really does help the end of the season work pretty well. And that's kind of where they're left off of, they get to be there, but what happens to them, we'll have to wait till season 4. And so right when they go to the black before they go to the credits, we get Melanie 3 months later on a train. Now I'm sure someone will correct me, but I can't remember if that's how long it takes them to get back to the same area that they were in. But basically Melanie is just on the train. She's just keep monitoring the train engine and stuff like that, and all of a sudden she looks up and there's a rocket flying in the air and it explodes. I don't know what that means, to be fairly honest. There's a rocket that exploded. I mean, that's obviously what it means, but she looks on it not very optimistically, I guess you could say. And that's when the camera pans quickly on the rocket and moves up, and there's some dramatic music and stuff like that, and that's when the episode ends. That leads into some really interesting theories about, is this where they're at? Are they back where the Big Alice crew was at? Is there something that happened to Big Alice? Are we going to have like a lost moment where they show the other crew for like 3 episodes and then they go back to another crew for 3 episodes? But could it be Wilford has found a way out and he's found his own crew and he has missiles? I mean, who knows? Is Snowpiercer in danger? It's entirely unknown what's happening, but it really kind of leads to theories about there's either something's happening with Wilford, somebody is alive out there, or the Big Alice crew is in serious trouble. And it's going to be really interesting to see. I'm interested to see how they're going to plan out the series in the 4th season. If they're going to do that, if they're going to show like in that 3-month period the lives of, which I'm sure they're going to do in some form or fashion, where they're going to show the Snowpiercer crew and they're going to show the Big Alice crew and just how everything's planning. Maybe we'll see the hours and minutes leading up to that situation. Who possibly knows? Or maybe they'll just go straight into when that rocket went off. And it's going to be really interesting to see. Like I said, there is a 4th season coming, so there's definitely theories and logics and ideas. But yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. Like I said, this is the first time I'm going, I don't know. I have no idea where the series is going to end, because at this point, you could have almost ended it there, and that would have been a season or series finale. And the series had not been connecting very well or not been doing very well in the ratings. But this is a really popular show for a cable network episode show with TNT. It does like 1 million views an episode, but for TNT, it's a really, really successful show. So. And yeah, I think that'll do it for, my take of season 3. With final thoughts, I do think it's a much more improved season. It does have its problems, as every season has had. It has its quirks and weirdness to it. Like I said, I understand people do not like this series or this season. They've fallen off of it, and that's perfectly all right. It does happen, but I think what happened in season 2 was such a letdown that season. Maybe my ambitions for this show was lowered, and when I actually watched the show, I was a little more improved. But the stuff with Pike and the stuff with Melanie and all that stuff, it was really just kind of weird and kind of. It could have been better, to be fairly honest. And it doesn't make it a terrible season, but it has its weirdness to it that I really didn't like. And the whole stuff with LJ and John and Audrey and Wilford, there was so much that could have been that the writers just kind of were struggling to deal with. So I didn't hate the season. I loved it more than I hated it, but yeah, it has its problems definitely. And I know you guys have said in the comments the problems that it's had, and I agree with most. Some I don't, but a lot of them I do. So overall, this episode, for the last episode of the season 10, I'm going to give a let's go 8.5 out of 10, to be fairly honest. Like I said, there's a lot of weird stuff in this episode, but 8.5 out of 10 is still great, to be fairly honest. It's still good. So for the season, and I'm not really factoring in all the episodes together, but I'm going to give the whole entire season like an 8.7 out of 10. I know it's like rounding to a point whatever, but 8.7 for the entire season. Like I said, it had one great episode, some really good episodes, a couple okay episodes, and one like bad episode. So, but yeah, this will do it for Snowpiercer season 3, as well as this episode, Snowpiercer season 3 episode 10, which is the original Sinners. As always, in the comments below, what was your overall take on the episode? What was your overall take on the season? If you didn't like it and you're planning on not watching again, that's perfectly all right. If you loved it, let me know as well. But otherwise, if you like what you see on this channel, hit the subscribe button to join Movie Emporium. Hit that notification bell at the top to find what's coming in next. If you liked the video, awesome. Hit that like button, and I guess we'll see you guys in season 4 of Snowpiercer. Peace out.